everybody, I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Joining me now is Charles Lipson, Professor Emeritus at the University of Chicago. Charles, thanks for coming on.
Well, it's my pleasure, even though what we watched last night was like something that you probably haven't seen, Brittany. But when I was a kid, there used to be something called a demolition derby. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
These old cars would smash into each other until only one car was left running. That's what it was like.
Wow, quite a visual. So let's just dive right in. As we all know, last night it was a historic night, the first presidential debate between two presidents, one former, one incumbent, Donald Trump and Joe Biden. What are your takeaways?
Trump was Trump. If you whatever you liked about him, you liked last night. Whatever you hated about him, you hated last night. It wasn't so much that he won, it's that Biden lost, and didn't just lose, he lost badly. He lost so badly that Democrats must be in full-scale panic now about whether he can continue all the way through to the election. And looming behind him is Kamala Harris. So they have real problems, but then again, so does the country.
I want to start at the top of the debate. Biden comes out, he shuffles out, and from there, people immediately were blowing up social media with concerns of his mental acuity, of his voice, and he was there to quell fears about his age. He is 81, and no one has said he has done that. What do you think?
The problem isn't just age. The problem is the ravages of age, and those were on full display. Joe Biden has constantly said they're about the same age. That's true, but it's misleading. Trump didn't show his age last night. There have been times that he's missed things on in the process of talking and so forth. But then again, he's out in public all the time. Joe Biden is hiding, and I would say that if Biden's goal was to allay those fears, he did the reverse. He compounded them. To me, the thing he most looked like was one of those Fabergé eggs where they painted the outside, but they poked a little hole and drained out everything that's inside. He just looked pitiful, and it was really concerning because not just because of who will win the election, but he's still the president until mid-January next year.
I do want to get your take on some of his responses, though, because when the economy was brought up, and one of his first responses, Biden invoked Afghanistan. And Afghanistan is probably one of the most contentious points of his presidency because of that chaotic withdrawal with 13 U.S. service members dying. Trump pounced on that. Biden also had a question about abortion, and he botched that response. And abortion should be a layup for Democrats. That's one of the issues where they're stronger on. So what do you make of the substance of his responses as well?
Well, what Joe Biden, what were his strong points? What's his party's strong points? Obviously, abortion or reproductive rights, whatever you want to call it. A second, surprisingly, he's actually not ahead, according to polling, on defense of democracy, but he is ahead on what people thought of January 6th and Trump not conceding the last election, really. And Trump managed to squirm out of that. Trump never answered that question, but Biden didn't really effectively press it. And that was a consistent theme. He didn't get out his points very well, and he didn't press his opponent very well. The third thing is that he's trying to say that the economy is doing well. But according to polling, voters don't think so, even though we're in nearly full employment. But the real problem is that real wages went down compared to very high inflation. Uh, uh, Nominal wages didn't keep up with it. So voters don't think they can afford the rent or to buy a house. Uh, they can see what's happening at the grocery store and so forth. And Biden had to reassure voters on that, and I don't think he managed to do that. But again, I don't think, and I think conversely, Trump pressed all of his major issues: crime, immigration, control of the border, the usual. I'm going to cut taxes, Joe's going to raise them. Joe raised the traditional Democratic point, it's just a tax cut for the rich. I don't think that plays anymore very well. And the reason I don't, Brittany, is that Trump has transformed the party. It's no longer George H.W. Bush's party. It's a populist party.
What's interesting is this morning, as everyone's talking about the debate, no one is talking about policy today. They're not talking about what Joe Biden said. They're talking about how he said it. And if you turn on any network, if you look at any paper, the question of that's being floated is Biden going to be replaced before the DNC? What do you think?
Well, it's just guesswork. But let me explain what the problems are. The problems are, first, he's an incumbent president who has won the primaries. He has the votes. Secondly, there's no coherent party structure. It's not like years ago when you could get the leaders of the party in a smoke-filled room and they could make some decisions. They're the ones in Chicago in 1944 who picked Harry Truman as the vice president, knowing that President Roosevelt was unlikely to make it through a next term. So there's nothing like that. If he doesn't want to move out, I think the only person who can tell him it's just not going to work is Barack Obama. But notice that Barack Obama apparently didn't do that when he could have and should have months and months ago. Or if he did, Joe just told him, "Buzz off. I'm not moving." The next problem is that the number two person would naturally want to move up, Kamala Harris. Well, the Democrats have played identity politics as their principal card for years and years. Identity politics and wealth transfers and a big state that will do everything for you. That's their platform. And they're caught now because if they replace a black woman as the nominee of the party, even if they'd done that months ago, if they replace her and it's not a fair fight election, it's not a nomination fight in which voters make that choice, they're going to have a huge problem with the black vote, especially black women. And it's not that those black women are going to vote for Trump, they're just going to stay home.
I want to talk about the reaction to the debate because afterwards, historically in a debate, when the debate's over, surrogates will go out and they will say, hey, my candidate won, here's how they won, and your candidate lost. We didn't really hear resounding praise for President Biden, aside from his wife, Dr. Joe Biden, at an after party. We did hear from two people, Vice President Kamala Harris, who I found her response very interesting because she should be Biden's biggest cheerleader. She's on the ticket, and she said that the debate was off to a slow start. She agreed there, but Biden ended it well. And instead of looking at the debate, people should look at the past 3.5 years. Another name floated as a possible replacement for Biden is the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, and he said this, quote, "You don't turn your back because of one performance. What kind of party does that?" And quote, "The president has delivered. We need to deliver for him at this moment." What do you make of their reactions there?
Um, Frankly, I don't think there's anybody who could say that Biden won that debate. But that's not the problem. The problem is not that he lost this time but could come back with such a much better performance in September. The problem is that he lost for reasons that are permanent and that will get worse. This is a naked emperor problem. They've hidden him for a long time. They don't let him answer questions in public. He spends a lot of time at the beach house in Delaware and so forth. It's just clear that there's not just physical frailty, there's not just age, but there's increasing cognitive problems. I'm not a doctor, I can't tell you what those are, but he didn't assuage any of those. He compounded those in the performance last night. And people just know these are not problems that get better, and they're not temporary problems. They're problems that get worse. And the party now has a big problem because of this.
Do you think the party now has a trust problem? Because I'm going to read some headlines. The New York Post just said, Politico, Biden is toast. An op-ed in the New York Times, Joe Biden is a good man and a good president. He must bow out of the race. And there has been this sense, if you log on to social media, if you turn on any channel of the news, of panic amongst Democrats. I talked to a lifelong Democratic voter last night, and they were surprised at the debate. They said they were a Hillary voter, they were a Biden voter, and they said, I can't vote for Trump, but in good conscience, I cannot vote for Joe Biden.
I'm going to be meeting with a group of senior Democrats in Illinois. So these are true blue people later today. And I expect to hear a lot of that. But they now face a real problem. I think your quote from Gavin Newsom is very interesting. Newsom doesn't want to be one of the people surrounding Caesar and have Caesar say "et tu, Gavin," as he stabs him. Gavin wants to be seen as somebody who is an heir apparent. But here's the problem: the heir apparent is always the vice president. And if the vice president were defeated in an open primary where Democratic voters had their say, and if that had happened months and months ago, then the party might be able to coalesce around a new nominee. But if Biden is forced out, and everybody knows that Kamala can't win a general election. They may be wrong, but I mean that's the general view. She bowed out of the 2020 primaries with zero support, and she had lots of money, and she came from a true blue Democratic state with a lot of voters. So the fact that she couldn't get any traction at all should tell you something. But if they force her out, they insult one of the key constituencies in the party, which is black voters, and especially black women voters who they count on. Those voters won't vote for Trump, but they won't come out to the polls at all. And this is a party that has played identity politics to the hilt for decades, and now they're stuck with the results. So they've got a real problem. Newsom is not a good answer because he's run California into the ground, and that takes something. That's a great state. It should be just thriving. But when people move out of California to live in Nevada, you know that there's a problem. So the Democrats would potentially have some good candidates: Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, Jared Polis of Colorado. But again, there's this giant roadblock in the form of Kamala and in the form of timing. And there are no party leaders who can just go to Joe Biden and say, step out, unless Joe himself just sees that it's all collapsing around him.
Democrats definitely are at a crossroads right now of, do we still stick by Biden less than 2 months away from the DNC, or do we switch gears? So let's say they do stick by Biden. An advisor reportedly said today that Biden still plans to debate Trump in September. So simply put, will President Biden, if he is the nominee, beat Donald Trump? Or could he?
Well, anything is possible. There are always black swan events, the health of the candidates, political events. We've had a lot of very bad guys get across the border. There could be, some attack. There are all sorts of things that could happen between now and November. Uh, but before the debate, um, 528, Nate Silver, said that Biden had only a one-third chance of winning. Why did he say that? Because to win, Biden has to win uh, the whole northern tier of states, and that includes Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania now is tilting toward Trump. It's a contested state. Ohio is gone. Florida is gone for the Democrats, but they could still win. Democrats could still win Michigan. They could still win Wisconsin. But even if they win both of those, they still have to win Pennsylvania. Right now, that looks like it's out of sight before the debate. I would say right now it's it's moving into the rearview mirror. Objects are smaller than they appear.
You did mention in a conversation between you and I offline that the way the surrogates were talking last night was more like a eulogy. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I think it was just impossible to spin this in any credible way as a win. The best you could say was a bad performance tonight, but I know he'll come back. And what I've said before is that I don't think these are comebackable problems, both because the performance was so bad and because the reasons for it are not like temporary, they're permanent. And I think you couldn't defend him without losing all your own credibility. I'll be interested to see if anybody is willing to go forward. I think that my guess, Brittany, is that it's going to be more in sorrow than in anger will be the tone. It's just a sad situation.
Charles, I really appreciate the conversation today. And as more develops from this debate and what happens in this race, I do hope you come back on soon and join me again. Charles Lipson, thanks for coming on.
Brittany, it's such a pleasure to talk with you. It always is.